Okay, good morning, everyone. And it seems that we're live okay. You might notice I'm in a different space, different place. Oh, that's the fridge. Actually coming to you from retreat, the foothills of a mountain. So I can't promise that this reception will be brilliant. It is a clear day with little wind, but I think it's a bit touch and go. So we'll just have to see how we go. If it cuts out, you probably, don't worry, it's probably not your end. It's going to be this end. But it's early morning enough, so hopefully you'll have some clarity and some continuity in what I say. So welcome to all those out there, those in the chat room from all over the world. And the place I'm in is very beautiful. I don't have my mic, so again, I'm hoping this laptop picks up my sound okay. So maybe I can just get some feedback that you can actually hear me all right. I'm speaking at a kind of a normal volume, but I didn't want to take too many things on retreat. So I left the microphone at home. So okay, so you can hear me. Good. I think it's a fairly decent inbuilt mic. And hopefully the picture's okay. I'm not sure if the mic's good enough to pick up the beautiful bird song that's here with me now, and the occasional cow. But there's a lot of bellbirds singing. Not sure what that. Anyway, some wattle birds, some magpies. It's there's a wide range of beautiful birds out here in the mountains. And this morning I thought I'd do things a little differently, maybe because I'm in a different place. And just to ask, let's start with some Q&A first. So any questions you might have that you can write in the chat, of course, on Dharma or meditation. And I'll do my best to give some reflections, just bearing in mind that I am not the oracle of all wisdom. I just do my best to share whatever little I know and through my own practice experience that might help point you in the right direction. But ultimately, really all the answers, and this isn't to sound arrogant, but all the answers we have are within us, and we can find them, particularly when the mind is quiet. And by all the answers, I mean the important answers, not how a fridge works or, how to fly a rocket, but the more internal answers about our heart and the way we work and the way the mind works. We have all those answers within us. We just have to trust it and then create the conditions in order to listen. And all my responses are really just pointing you back to what you already know. So if that can be of help, then that's wonderful. So I thought if there's any questions on Dharma or meditation, and not too philosophical, it really has to just be, come back to where you're at, really be honest about what's real or authentic for you, and perhaps some of the things you might be struggling with or wanting to understand. And so I'll do my best to respond to that. And then I thought that could inform the meditation that we move into. I'm sure it will. So I'll see what questions might pop up now. Yeah, so David, the questions that you were asking, like, is the fourth jhana a state of vipassana? Any recommendations for a Goenka retreat? just ask it some of the questions, the practical questions that you can find on Google, that you can do that. Recommendations. I haven't been involved in the Goenka tradition for a long time, so I'm not the person to ask. So I think online is a place where you can find that, where people who are in that tradition can make those recommendations. And similarly with things like the fourth jhana, again, there's so much stuff online, teachings that you can find these kind of answers to. But I just want to come back to, the heart, what's really happening, how to work with where we're at. This is what I said. And then that will inform a very kind of real meditation. Okay, so Carolyn's saying, struggling with letting things be as they are at any given time. And then I'll get to Joyce's question, which is a very real one about a diagnosis under that. But actually, can I just read yours as well, Joyce? Because I imagine these two are going to be very interconnected. So Joyce is saying, I've just found out I have cancer. For the moment, it's all fear, how to come back to peace. And I think, Caroline, you probably realize that, the same question about struggling with letting things be as they are at any given time. So if we put ourselves in Joyce's position, because at one level, we're all in Joyce's position. Joyce has found out she has a cancer, and how would we react to being told that we have I don't want to say a terminal illness, because it not necessarily frame it in that way, but that's often how we react when we hear the word cancer. But we also, this is powerful, and thank you for sharing it, Joyce, because we all have a terminal illness. We just think we don't, and that Joyce is the poor one with cancer. But the reality is that we all have a terminal illness of being born, and the only way that this body is going to go is to die, in whatever way it's going to die. And the blessing that Joyce has received is that it's waking her up to that with something kind of very concrete, And so when we get that kind of that diagnosis, or that kind of so-called reality check, it wakes us up to, oh my God, I'm going to die. And regardless of what the doctors say, it's a realization that this is the nature of the body, to die. So something like that is, there's no way the mind's going to go anywhere else now for Joyce, other than being very present and aware and having to deal with all the emotions that come. And, probably the realization is that when we get that, fear would be one of the first reactions to it. Confusion, maybe anger, and thinking about all the stages that we go through. But all it really is, and this isn't to diminish your health scare, it's just waking us up to the reality that's there all the time. This body is constantly decaying and dying, and each day getting closer to its demise. And whether that be through a slow illness or an accident that could happen any moment, any day, or even just a massive heart attack, we can go at any moment. But we keep that from us. We push that away, that reality. And I think this question about letting things be as they are at any given time is often a reaction to coming into that space of the realization that we're not here forever, and that when What we're always trying to do is move to the next moment and the next moment, futurizing, perhaps as a way, not even perhaps, as a way of keeping us away from this present moment with all its uncertainties that we have to face, with the realization that this body is going to die, and all the myriad things that come up when we're just in the present moment with no distractions. And all of you are meditators, so you know that when you sit down and you stop the busyness, you stop the physical busyness, then the mind is still running. It's running because it feels like it has to do, it has to be, it has to get. And how difficult it is just to sit and rest into not doing, not becoming, not imagining. And what does that throw up? It throws up all these struggles of fear, of uncertainty, confusion, maybe a sense of just emptiness, or a clearer realization that we're going to die. This body is going to die anyway. So this is why this struggle happens, because we're so conditioned from such an early age to being someone, to getting something, to achieving, whether it be at school, to being a good friend or a good student, to when we're adults, being a good parent, a successful career person, or getting the next holiday, the next house renovation, the next Thanksgiving, the next Christmas, and it's this cycle of, isn't it? Each year we're on this kind of perception of, okay, it's nearly the end, and it's nearly the end of the year, so everyone's starting to move towards Christmas and the holiday season, if it's holiday season in your neck of the woods, which it is in Australia, and people are planning and doing, and the supermarkets are, I think they put out Christmas stuff months ago, actually. So everyone gets prepared for shopping and this expectation of the big day. And then it's all over and there's a bit of a lull. Some people get very depressed or get depressed on Christmas Day because it's such a big wind up. And then it all starts again, the beginning of the work year, the school year, the family year. If you have those things, and if you don't have family, you don't have friends, you don't have a job, then that's just like a big empty void and can throw us into other feelings of emptiness and despair. So we struggle with things being the way we don't want them to be. Like, we don't want to have cancer, but we've been given a diagnosis. We don't want to die, but that's the only guarantee we're given when we're born. It's the only way it's going to go. But not now. I want to go later when I'm 95 in my sleep. Even when people get to 95, they still don't want to die, some of them. They're not prepared to die. So yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful awakening to just say every day. This is what the Buddha encouraged his disciples to do, lay and monastic. Every day, reflect on death. In fact, every moment with each breath, this could be my last breath. And that can sound a little bit morbid or depressing, but it actually has the opposite effect if you practice it with courage and with willingness. One, you come into the fear. If there's fear there, you face the fear and you don't push it away. This is the encouragement anyway. You feel the fear and do it anyway. Isn't that what they say? You feel the fear, be with it, start to understand it, feel into it, and the fear will dissipate. And as that fear dissipates, then wisdom has a chance to arise. But even in the moment of fear, it's teaching you anyway. It's teaching you about how we hold on to this body as me and mine. We don't want to die. because we think this is me. And if I die, if this body dies or goes back to the elements, which is more really what happens, then we think that's the end of me, because we're so identified with the body. So to reflect each day, this body is going to die. Encourage you all to do it every day before, either before meditation, before you go to sleep. It might bring up fear, but that's okay. You need to go towards that and learn to understand it. And eventually, that sort of practice has amazing effects. You can imagine what it can do, but I encourage you to practice it. Ultimately, it puts things in perspective. It wakes us up. It helps us let go of petty concerns and illusions and delusions that we're not going to die, that this body's not going to die. And it also can create a lot of compassion and understanding for others, because we're all in this together. Those that we think or they think are super successful or powerful or beautiful or whatever, the messages that are out there about the great and the mighty, the bold and the beautiful, they're all just corpses, walking corpses, heading towards their demise as well. No one is anything more special at that level. And that can just help us put things in perspective if we're feeling better or worse than others, superior or inferior. We're all the same here. And none of us are our stories or our bodies. So that struggle that you're talking about, Caroline, with letting things be, a contemplation of the reality of life and death is something that can really help with that. So I think some of those reflections might be enough, and hopefully they're enough. But I think there are also two themes, interconnected themes, that I'll bring into the meditation when we get there. I thought I'd allow just about 30 minutes first for Q&A, just doing things a little differently, and then bring these themes into some contemplations and reflections. So then, of course, the thing's moved. It's got a mind of its own. Okay, I found you. So Dave says, I would like to hear about methods to learn to respond rather than react. Yeah, so if you can hang in there, Dave, I'll bring that very theme into the meditation. Rather than talk about it as an idea, it's better to be talking about that while people have their minds turned towards it in a meditative state. Okay. So Marion said, I sometimes find it difficult knowing when I'm sitting with an issue or I've slipped into feeding it. Any advice, please? Yeah. Again, Marion, I think I'm not trying to avoid this, but I think that again will come into, because it's a good one to look at within meditation. But from a kind of a theoretical explanation of it, I think the clearest way to know the difference between whether we're just proliferating with thoughts, because it's difficult. I know where you're coming from with this, and it's hard to explain too, but say, give an example of you caught up with anxiety, And all you're noticing is this stream of anxious thoughts and feelings. And there's a part of the mind that feels that they're watching it. And then part of you feels like it's kind of taken over a bit. And the best thing to do in that situation is just to notice that feeling of doubt, because that's the other thing that's coming up. You're doubting, and the doubt feeds the anxiety, and the anxiety feeds the doubt. Am I doing this right? Am I just feeding this feeling of anxiety or anger or depression or whatever it is? Just notice, look, I have a lack of trust in my own process to deal with this. So it's really just noticing what we add on to it. And when you notice that doubt, then it's not saying that the anxiety will go, but that other layer of confusion around it will. And just one of the things you can do, if you're not certain, if you're just able to settle with the thing that's arising, two things actually, is to come really into the bodily sense of it. Ask yourself, where am I feeling this in the body? If it's anxiety. And when we go to the body, then we know we're not thinking about it or feeding it. We're just noticing, my stomach feels churned up. My shoulders are tense, my jaw is tense. So that gives you a very concrete connection with whatever the difficulty or the emotion is. And that definitely takes you out of the conceptual proliferation. So that's one way. The second way is just to kind of not to push it down, but just to kind of, okay, that's there. I know you, friend. Often it's habitual. So we get to know these things. Oh yeah, I know that feeling of jealousy or that feeling of resentment. And the reason we know it is because it's a habitual tendency. So it's not to push it away, but just say, yeah, I know this. And then just come back to the awareness that knows itself, that knows it. So come back to the knowing nature of the mind. Just knowing, even if that helps to say that. Okay, I know this. And when you acknowledge the knowing aspect, the awareness, and very consciously do that, then there's some feedback loop for you to say, I'm not feeding it because I'm knowing it. So you might need thought sometimes to help you deal with difficult thoughts or difficult emotions. And that's when thought can be a friend. So it's not that all thoughts are bad, but turn your thoughts around to, okay, I know this, recognizing the knowing nature, which is not a thought, but you might need to say that first to wake you up, and stay with the knowing. Okay, so those two things, either a very bodily awareness of it and going into the body takes you away from feeding it, conceptualizing it, proliferating it, or coming back to the knowing nature. So, I often bring this sort of practice into meditation. So I will do that when we do the meditation. So it's not just me giving some sort of explanation or lecture, and then it becomes a very, practical, real experience for us all. So thank you for that question, Marion, because I think it's a very, it's what we're all dealing with. Okay, so Anne, hi from Greater Boston. Adrian says, when I do concentration meditation, it seems as if I'm developing this sense of someone looking at the object, with the result of feeling a sort of distance from the object. Can you comment on that? Yeah. So this is just something to be seen through. Some people have this idea that there's dualistic meditation and non-dual meditation, and I don't agree with that, because even these people who think they're doing this non-dual practice, they're not aware that they haven't transcended the sense of subjectivity or sense of self. And we don't do that until we've really dropped everything. So, of course, this sense of self is there when we're practicing concentration meditation, or even this idea of a non-dual meditation. And I meant when I say it's an idea, non-dual meditation for most people is an idea and an ideal. They're not completely in a non-dual state. They just think they are, and they like the feeling of it. But to be, so there's nothing wrong with, having an object for your concentration. And when you notice that sense of subjectivity, that there's a me here looking at there, that's to be noticed. That's the very thing that uproots dualistic vision. So you just notice that sense of, and it is a sense, it's a perception of a self, which we're creating in every moment. And the point of meditation is to start to undo that. And sometimes that can happen in a flash, and people just drop into, a complete dissolution of a sense of self. And some people do that on drugs because that's what they're looking for, or psychedelics. And that can either lead to euphoria or terror, and whether on drugs or in meditation, depending on how much we're ready for it and how much, it depends on so many things. But generally, if people just drop out, if you like, into that authentic non-dual state where the subject disappears and the sense of subject-object disappears, then, it's not necessarily going to last forever. It'll just be an experience, but it's something to learn from. So having that sense of feeling a certain distance from the object, you're saying with the result of feeling a sort of distance, I'm wondering if you mean a disassociation when you say distance. Because that's a good sign if it's just like not recognizing the subject anymore. It's a sign that the fixation, the conditioned feelings and perception around this solid me is starting to kind of break down a little bit, so that we're looking at things in life as if we're an observer, without being, when you say distance, maybe a certain detachment. So that's all good, but then you might, keep going, without attaching to concentration practices. The good thing about concentration practices, when they're used properly, is that they sharpen the mind for insight to develop. So then in those instances, then when there is concentration, to turn the mind towards inquiry, towards wisdom developing. So to ask, okay, I have this sense of someone looking as if from a distance. Who is this? What is this sense of me or mine, or even the observer? So you go looking directly at the observer itself. And again, let your own inner guidance and the wisdom will come up naturally to inform you about all these assumptions and conditioned patterns around the subject here. So that's all good. Just keep going and keep inquiring, and get the balance between, in Buddha Dharma, the Buddha said that there's three foundations here for the practice. There's sila, so keeping a good base of moral virtue, moral life and virtue, helps us to develop samadhi or concentration. Without concentration or samadhi, wisdom will be weak, which is the third one, panya, wisdom. So you need all three. If we just think we're going to get to some non-dual state because we've read about it and it sounds great, and we're going to bypass everything. We're going to go straight to Dzogchen. And we haven't done any of the preparatory practices. We don't keep sila, and we don't care for concentration. Then our wisdom's going to be very, very weak and most probably very deluded. Just ideas, conceptual meditation. So you need all three, what do you call it? All three practices, sila, samadhi, panya. But if you have too much concentration and get attached to that, or to jhanic states, and you aren't interested in investigation or inquiry or insight, then you'll just have strong concentration and dodgy wisdom or poor wisdom. But if you use that, that's what Ajahn Chah used to talk about, having a knife, So the concentration can really sharpen the mind. And then wisdom, actually he talked about wisdom being the sharpness of the knife, and concentration being the strength. So you can't chop a tree down with a razor blade. You need an axe. So you need the weight of concentration and the sharpness of wisdom to chop a tree or a small branch, because it takes you a while to do it with a razor blade. So anyway, Adrian, I hope some of those reflections are helpful, but also just to encourage you, that's good. If you're starting to distance yourself from the object, these conditioned perceptions of self are breaking down, keep going, keep looking at who this observer is, who we take them to be. Okay, so Sampada has asked how to ignore 3D reality or negative thoughts while manifesting your desire. I'm not really sure I understand the question. And it's not even a matter of trying to ignore reality or ignore negative thoughts, just noticing them as they come up. And I guess in my view, it's better not to manifest any desires, to look at the desire. What are you desiring? Any desire is actually the cause of, tension and wanting. So I'd turn this question around, just say, what are you desiring? What do you want? Is it really worth wanting? Come back to that reality that this body, we're all heading towards death. Is there anything worth putting your energy into out of desire? And that's not to say, because then people go to the extreme and say, well, I've got to work and I've got to arrange for my family. It's like, yeah, you do. So we do those things not through desire or wanting or clinging, just trusting, putting the energy in and knowing that things turn out the way they will and do. And then one day we get a cancer diagnosis. So what was all that wanting and desiring for, particularly if it's for material things? But even if there's this wanting to manifest a desire of enlightenment or some spiritual power, that's the same thing. It's just dressed in spiritual. So look at desire itself and how desire itself is the root cause of all suffering and wanting and becoming and movement. And come back to trying to understand what it feels like to be desireless. Krishnamurti said, I don't mind what happens. And in not minding what happens, he says you'll find great peace. Great joy in life comes from letting go. And then we just do what needs to be done. And, if we want a job, a particular job or a partnership, yeah, that's okay. But just see the clinging and the wanting and allow things to come. They don't always come. Sometimes they do. And then when we do get what we think we want, it's never the same. It's this imagination anyway. So there's so much wisdom to learn from challenging these ideas of manifestation and desire, getting things. They don't last. They're not who and what you are, and they will not bring you happiness. Okay. I'm seeing the thank yous and the smileys, but I'm not reading them out. Okay. And James says, Ajahn Tanisro has some amazing talks on death. Does he? His own talks on his, I think he has a YouTube channel, or he certainly has a website. So that's great. Thanks, James. If people would like to follow up on those. So Fina said, to put it bluntly, with this miserable world, lol, one can choose to remain to be ignorant and descend, or a wise man, woman can instead choose to get closer to God. Sure. Yep. Thank you, Ajanta. Ripple drop. Where to act from honesty. Since having my awakening, I've been kind of lost in losing the solid belief in myself. Realization happened by accident. Not so much sure it happened by accident. It happens due to causes and conditions, but it's not, I think the realization that it happens outside of our ego control is definitely true. But if something in you woke up, it's because you were ripe for that awakening process to happen. And we keep going. And you see, every little bit of insight or awakening chips away at this solid sense of self. So that's good. Keep going. And keep going, as you probably noticed, without thinking I'm making it happen. There's no I here to make anything happen. But there's just, there's effort without the efforter. There's awakening without the one who is awakened, or the awakener. There's experience without the experiencer. And there's realization without a person who's realizing. So that's all kind of deep and subtle stuff, but I'm sure you understand what I mean here. One thing we are all uncertainly certain of is that we are all terminated one day or another. But the certainty of that saddens one. Yeah. And thanks, Sai, Ganesh. That's part of the human condition, to feel a sadness about it. So it's not to deny that. It kind of brings up a sense of, what's the word? It's not coming. It's a nice word. Oh, it's gone. See, a bit sad about that. Poignancy. There's a certain poignancy, a vulnerability that happens when we reflect. We look at our child, our animal. We have a 22-year-old cat, as a lot of you know, and she's got kitty dementia. Believe it or not, there's such a thing called kitty dementia. And so, she's deaf and she's got chronic ear infections, and she's very, very slowing down. So it's obvious. I mean, it's obvious we're all going to do this, but it's very obvious that her demise is perhaps not too far away. And so I look at her and know that, and I see her vulnerability and the fact that, she will be gone from our lives. Well, we might go first, but anyway. But anyway, it's good to reflect on that and what does it do to the heart? It opens the heart, it softens the heart. It brings forth sadness, but that's not something to be rejected or seen as a problem. If we get lost in sadness and grief, then it causes us so much suffering, and it lacks wisdom. So when we feel the sadness, but we also know, reflect deeply, there's really no cat there. There's no one entity that I can say is the cat. Her body is a combination of elements that will go back to the elements. Her limited mind stream, her intellect, what she has, that will break up. But what is it that I find so loving and lovable about this being, And to do that, to reflect on that, brings up a sense that is not something that dies or can pass away, because it's not something you can actually cling to or point to as a thing. So how can that which isn't a thing, a phenomena that is subject to birth, death, decay, actually pass away and die? You can't lose that. You only think you can lose it if you hold on to it either as an idea, or you hold on to that form, that body, as a thing, or that idea that there is a cat, an essence of a cat. But when you reflect on emptiness, emptiness frees you. Emptiness frees that clinging, frees that confusion and delusion, because there was no cat there in the first place, how we think of it, that was born or dies. There's just the appearance, but that sense of deep love and connection transcends all of that. So embrace the sadness, the poignancy, the vulnerability, and the softness, and let that, fully come into your being and your heart. But then use wisdom in conjunction with it. It's not to dismiss that, but it'll take you deeper into peace and stillness and wisdom. So it's a good portal, sadness, because sadness has the effect of really slowing us down, letting go of all these crazy desires and movement and becoming, and puts us in a very open, quiet space. And, we let go of defenses, we let go of armoring, and then we can really look at what life and death and loss is really about. And these teachings of the masters are to inform us with wisdom about what reality is like. And even if we don't know that in our own experience, you can use them as a certain, something to give you a little bit of trust and faith. Faith is often dismissed in this culture, but there's nothing wrong with faith in the enlightened ones. And it's not a blind faith. You're not going to follow them off a cliff. But then when you've had your own direct experiences, even if you've just had mini awakenings, or a few near-death experiences, or having terminal diagnosis, which are waking you up, then you know for sure that the body dies, but something within us can never die. It was never born. So those kind of glimpses can give us a lot of confidence and faith. And then if we haven't had them, just trust and allow that sadness to soften you and wake you up at the same time. Okay. So it's getting on to 7:45, which is 45 minutes of questions. So I might just take one more, and then we'll use all of these really good questions and reflections to bounce into a meditation. So it's an interesting, different way of doing it, but I think it's quite helpful. Maybe one more question from Ragosa. If a sibling demands that I apologize and acknowledge wrongdoing, how do I do that when I don't believe I'm in the wrong? Yeah, it's a good thing there. So they fully believe that you've done something wrong. So you can always say, please forgive me for any harm I may have caused, unintentionally or intentionally. This is what we do in the monastery regularly to each other. We ask for forgiveness for anything I may have done by body, speech, or mind, intentionally or unintentionally, that caused harm. Please forgive me. So you can let it go as that. You don't have to. If you believe you didn't do anything wrong, that's fine. So you can just say, I'm sorry you feel that way. Please forgive me. It wasn't my intention to harm you or to cause harm. And then let it go. I mean, these things aren't worth holding on to. Remember, your sibling is going to die. You're going to die. Do you want to go, and you could die any moment, do you want to go to do you want to face death by holding on to righteousness, that you were in the right? Just let it go. I'm sorry she feels that, or he feels that way. Just come back to harmony again. I mean, if the whole world could do that with each other and just say, I'm sorry you feel this way. I can see why you feel that you're in the right and why you feel you're being victimized. Can we just stop fighting and work at living together in harmony? It's not that hard to do at one level. It's quite simple for both parties just to ask for forgiveness, even though their intention wasn't to harm, or if their intention was to harm, to ask for forgiveness. So easy, simple, but so difficult when people are caught up in politics, religions, beliefs, power, etc., etc. So, Ragosa, you have an opportunity to stop the potential war breaking out in your own family, and encourage you to do it. Peace has to start where we're at, within our hearts, within our own small spaces. But that does have a huge impact on the whole world. It's like a ripple going out to the ocean. So make peace, let go. Okie dokie. So it's 10 to 8 now. Let's come into meditation, and we can put all the questions, the confusions down, and I'll try and utilize some of those concerns within this space. So wherever you are, please get comfortable, or if you need to just stretch first before you sit or lie down or whatever you're doing, please do so. And thank you for your questions, everybody. And now is the time to go beyond the thinking mind and beyond the words, even though I'll use a few words as pointers. So just begin by taking a few conscious, deep breaths and get your body comfortable and relaxed. And just simply be aware of the energy that's flowing through your body. Things that might have been stirred up, or things that might have settled down. Whatever energetic feeling you can notice in the body. The body breathes. the heart pumps, feeling the tingling and sensations throughout the body, but in particular in the hands and the feet. And just let awareness of the body bring you more into a non-verbal, non-conceptual reality. Even as thoughts are still passing through the mind, just notice them as clouds zipping past. Gently turn your attention away from them, from engaging them. Not repressing them or fighting them, but just being patient, using the body, using the breath, using the sound of my voice and the pointers to help bring you more and more into the present moment. Where you feel more grounded, more whole. And less fragmented mentally, psychologically, emotionally. Just noticing whatever emotional state or mood might be present. Some might be very conscious, and some might be just lurking in the background, in the subconscious or unconscious. You can't put your finger on it. So whether it's an obvious feeling or mood, emotion of fear or anxiety, or a subtle sense of dis-ease, unease, just try to be sensitive to whatever moods might be passing through. But notice how they are just passing. Just like thoughts are clouds in the sky. Moods and emotions themselves aren't solid, aren't fixed. So let them come. Without identification, without resistance or clinging to them. Notice how they naturally dissolve. And start to recognize more and more the knowing nature of your mind. You can know fear. You can know confusion. You can know certainty and uncertainty. Any sense of righteousness, any sense of fixation, that too dissolves. Our whole system is like a bubbling brook. Physically, things are just bubbling up, energetically, vibrationally. It gives us a real sense of the impermanent nature of this body in this very moment. The cells are being born and dying every moment. No part of this body stays the same. Every year, every day, every month, it's growing older. It rejuvenates to a certain extent, but the nature of the body is to grow old. Like anything in life, a tree, a car, anything we see as solid, everything is of the nature of decay. And you can experience this directly in this moment. Just noticing how everything is in a flux. A process of birth and death every moment. And if we are fooled to believe that this body is me and doesn't change, and will either go on for as long as I like or a very long time, we're bound for a shock. The only certainty in life is uncertainty about how long this body will stick around. We care for the body in a balanced way. We rest it. We feed it healthily. But we don't cling to it. We don't claim ownership. It has its own bodily karma. And so we can learn to let go of the body while we're alive and while we seem healthy. We are not the body, and we are not the mind, the thinking mind. The mental processes, the emotional states, constantly changing, being born and dying, never stopping still. Like a flowing stream. But what knows this? Learn to recognize more and more the knowing nature. It simply knows without judgment, without clinging. And stays solidly in one place. Simply knowing. Allowing whatever comes to come. And allowing whatever goes, which is everything, to go. And keep just coming home. Just to knowing. And this knowing is like a light of wisdom in your own heart, mind. So it illuminates, it shines on all conditioned phenomena, knowing their nature is to arise and cease and to decay. But you notice that light is always bright. And the more we recognize it and turn towards it, the brighter it will become. Eventually illuminating the whole world, the whole cosmos, the whole universe, within and without. Recognizing that that light is within everything and every being. So I wish you all well and hope that that connection worked. I have no idea because you don't get feedback, but I guess, anyway, I'll know in the end. Hopefully it worked, and may you all be well. Contemplating impermanence and death every day is a key practice within Buddha Dharma, but really within all traditions, all religions, to bring awareness of impermanence helps us let go and live much more freely, happily, and wisely in this world. So the plan is in a fortnight that I, Jatindra, will do a live stream, but who knows? And I'm due to see you in a month, but who knows? If we meet again in this bodily form, then it's destined to be. If we don't, that's okay too. All is uncertain. And may you all be well, Joyce. May your fear turn into great peace. And may we all take the story, Joyce's situation, to heart for ourselves. Because we all have a terminal illness as far as his body is concerned. So let go and find the peace and compassion for all beings in your hearts. And until we meet again, if we do. Okay. Take care, everybody. And yeah, go well.